Hi guys, this is Umair back with another video. In this video, we're gonna learn about GoLang. It is one of the most demanding programming languages nowadays. It is an open source that makes it easy to build simple, reliable, and efficient softwares, and it gives us a very detailed documentation that we can go through. It includes modern standard library, it includes fast compiler, it compiles the whole code into a single library, it is strongly typed, it is object oriented programming language, it has a very good garbage collector, it is memory efficient, and it really manages code in a good way, in a simple way as well for the larger teams. If many team members are working on one project, it gives us a lot of flexibility, right? So it contains a lot of modern modules and everything that you can do with Java or with C++, with C sharp, you can do same things with Golang. Okay, so we're gonna start off with the basic syntax of Golang, how to define variables, if else, loops, and after this video you're gonna learn everything of this lang, and you will be able to build nice desktop applications using this language. So first of all, what you need to do is the operating system you are using, whether it's Linux, it's Mac, it's Windows, just click on the download button, open up the golang.org, click on this download button, and once you download it, install it in your system. And once you install it, you can open up any terminal and you can just write the command go version, and it will give you the latest version installed in your system. And I'm gonna start off by creating my first Go file that we can name anything. I have named it first.go, right? So here you're gonna just start off writing the code. So we start off writing the code for Golang with the package name. So every Go file should have a package name at the top, otherwise it will not work. And the package main, you can name anything in replacing the main word that I have written. And after that, I'm gonna import one thing. If you have used any other language, you must know that in C++ we have stdio, and in C sharp, in Java, we have a lot of different libraries. So just to print out messages, just to take input from users, we are gonna import a package that is called fmt, right? And in order to define a function, I'm gonna define a function main. Okay, so that's pretty much it. And in this function, we are gonna start defining variables and we're gonna run our code. So how you define the variable is var I, and then you define the data type. I'm gonna define int equals to 10, right? And how I'm gonna print it? fmt dot print line, and then I'm gonna enter I inside it. I'm gonna save this file, and in order to run it, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna write go run and first.go. Now you can see it has printed out 10, just like we expected. And this is how we define a variable. This is the data type, means this variable is going to take the value of integers in this I variable, and this is the type of int, right? So after that, how we going to print out any message? It's just like any other language. We can write out print ln hello world, and this is how there is no semicolon. So just like the Python, we don't have the semicolons in it. So you can see 10 and hello world. This is how we can print out strings, right? So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna define a variable j, okay? And now if I try to print out, just run this file. First of all, I want to show you something. If I run this file, it's going to throw an error because in Golang does not allow you guys to actually define a variable which you have not used. So if you have defined a variable, you must use it, okay? But I have not initialized it, I have just declared it, okay? So if I try to print this variable, what will it print? I have not defined it. You must be expecting it might be throwing undefined or null, but it's gonna print out 0. So as soon as we declare a new variable of integer type in Golang, it's automatically gonna initialize it with 0. It's just like equals to 0, okay? So this is how GoLang works, right? So now let's move forward, and we are gonna define a variable like j equals to 20, and once you declare it, and you can initialize it after that. Okay, and now if we are gonna print it, it's gonna replace 0 with 20, right? So next, we're gonna learn like how, what is the scope of these variables. So if we define var, it means that this variable has a package level scope. So means if we have other functions, and if we define any variable using var keyword, we can use that variable inside other functions as well. Like if we define another function right below, you can use these variables like this. If you want to define function level variables, I'm just going to let you know how you can define those. So but first of all, uh, I want to explain one thing, that if I define I int equals to 10, this is the right syntax. And if I define I equals to 10, okay, what will it do? Let me just comment out above lines, and I'm going to print out I now, and you see that I have not defined the type name of it. Okay, so if I don't define the type, we can still use it. It means that I can contain any value. It can contain boolean values, it can contain strings, it can contain float variables. So what do I mean by it? So 10 is an integer, and 10.2 is not an integer, it's a decimal value. Okay, so the benefit of not writing int while writing I is that we have a flexibility, whatever value we can store it, but it's not good for security purpose. You might wanna usually restrict a variable that this is the data type. For example, you're gonna let user to enter his phone number. So phone number cannot contain letters like A, B, C. It can only contain integers. So you want to restrict user that they should only enter integers. So that's, in that case, you want to restrict it with int, float, or anything variables, right? So I'm going to run this, so you can see it has printed out this. So it is just flexible. Just be curious and serious while defining the variables. So I usually define the type of variables whenever I declare it, right? So now if I define int along with it, this is wrong, because 10.2 is not assignable to this variable because it is of type int. It is expecting that I is gonna take all the values of type integers, right? So now let me comment this out. Let's learn like how we can define variables of local scope. Like if we define a variable in this function, it might, if we can't let it be used in other functions. Okay, so there is a shorthand syntax that is called colon equals to. Okay, let me just copy, and I'm gonna print that out. And if I run this file, it's gonna print out 2. So this is how you're gonna declare any function level variable. Okay, so but there are 2-3 things that we need to care about while defining this. Like when you define it, it should be initialized at the same time. It cannot be like you declare it like this and you initialize it anywhere after that, just like I did it above. I declared it and I initialized it. You can't do that. You need to initialize it straight away. Okay, and while defining it, it its type should not be written. Okay, it is a generic type. Like I can't define int after this. This is not a right syntax in GoLang. Okay, so this is a straightforward syntax, and you can define anything to it, like the decimal value as well. So if I define like this, it will just print out like this. Okay, so this is the shorthand syntax. And the third thing, as I've already told you, it has a function level scope, right? Now let's talk about what are the different data types of integers. Okay, so you might have learned it in other languages as well, but while defining integers, we have other things as well. Int, int 8, int 16, int 32. So the integers are incrementing with the power of 2. So 2 power 3 8, 2 power 4 16, 2 power 5 equals to 32, 2 power 6 equals to 64. So int 64, right? So what does it mean? So it means that what is 2 power 8? Okay, 2 power 3, like if we multiply 2 by 8, it means that it starts from 0 to 255. It can contain 256 letters. So let me define like int var I int 8 equals to 23. Okay, let me comment above lines, and now I'm gonna print out I. So we'll see it has printed 233. Now at start I'm going to change it to 423. So it has given me an error. The reason is it says constant 423 overflows int 8. Int 8 means that if we multiply 2 8 times, it becomes 256. So 256 means that it can contain 256 integers. So 0 to 255 are 256. So 16 means if we multiply 2 uh, 16 times, like 2 static 2 static 2, so whatever the value becomes, it's gonna contain the values starting from 0 up to that numbers. So if we wanna restrict any particular value to not exceed particular limit, then we can use these kinds of data types. You can check out the documentation. It's not specific to Golang. It is a general concept. It's called binary numbers. Okay, in binary numbers, what is 2 power uh, like if we multiply 32 times, what the value becomes? So that's the limit we can contain. So there are other types as well, like the uint and uint 8. U means I think so. I don't remember the word, but what does it mean? Like it means that you cannot go to the negative numbers. Okay, so if I write u, let me comment that thing. So it's gonna print out 23. Okay, now if I define minus with it, you will see it has given us an error that it overflows. Now if I remove u from the data type and rerun this file, it's gonna print out 23. Okay, so int 8 can support values from minus 128 to plus 128. So if we define uint 8, that means that it's gonna support values from 0 to 255. Okay, so this is the purpose of u while defining these variables, right? So just like the int, we have the other data types as well, like float actually allow us to enter any decimal values. We have the float 16, float 64, and u float 64, and these things we can have in Go language, right? So I hope that you've got the idea. So let's move forward, and we're gonna talk about what are the limitation by defining these things. Okay, so I have initialized this variable, and let me initialize j int 32 equals to 45. Okay, any random value. Okay, so now if I try to plus 23 into 44, what will happen? Let's see. It's going to give an S error because these data types mismatch, even though the values are same, but these are mismatching. So so I don't want to change these data types. I just want to print out the value. So I can convert these variables into specific types. Okay, so I can write int 8 around this j variable. So I have converted j into int 8. So now I has int 8 data type and j has int 8 data type. Now this is how we can convert the data types, and it will only work if the value of j can be stored within this variable. So 45 can be stored within int 8. If the value of int 32 was like above 255, like 300, 1000, 2000, then that value cannot be stored in int 8. That would have thrown another error. Okay, so now if I run this file, you will see it has printed out 64 adding these variables. Okay, so same for other things, like if I define f float, okay, and I have defined 3.2, and now if I just print line and I will define I plus f. Now 23 is an integer 8 and this is the float. Float, let me define 32. Simple float, we can't define, we need to write it like this. Okay, so let me print this out, and now it has shown us an error. Obviously it should have shown because I is an integer and f is an float. Now let me convert integer into float. Let's see if it works. So float 32. So now both variables have been converted into float 32, and now you can see 26.3 have been printed. It has been converted into float. So when we convert this thing into float, it automatically adds 0.0 after that to convert it into the float. Okay, and this is 32, so the final answer is 26.2. So this was about the integers and the float. Let's move forward and learn about the strings. Okay, so for strings we have a data type string. Just like other languages, we can declare it and after that we can initialize it. S is equals to the hello world. Okay, and let me just copy this line and I'm gonna print S. It's not strings, it's S. Now I'm gonna run this file. So it has printed out hello world because this is the value. So all combined letters should be stored within the double quotes, right? So now we can have other things as well, like let me use like a colon equals, just like I explained above. This is how we need to define it. So hello slash t guys, and we can have slash n. This is for bringing cursor to the next line, and slash t is for tab. It will add multiple spaces just like the tab keyword on your keyboard does. Hello guys, how are you? Right, just copy it and I'm gonna print this a variable over here. Right, so you can see hello world and this hello, this is the tab spaces, and this guys, after that we have entered slash n. Slash n means that it's gonna bring cursor down, and after that with the space it's gonna print out how are you. So these are the characters, escape characters you can use. So now let's move forward and let's see like how can we concatenate to variables of strings. Like if we want to combine both the strings into one variable, so how we can do it? So s plus a is something, plus variable actually combines both the strings. So if I run this file, so you can see it has printed out this line. So this, it has concatenated it like this. Okay, so I'm going to comment these lines because I'm going to use s keyword, s variable. uh, I'm going to let you know that how you can uh, like bring out a particular substrings. You can, if you want to need like a VWOR from this string, how can you do it? So I'm going to write fmt print line, okay, and I have written s, and after that I have entered square brackets. Square brackets let us to take out the substrings from this string. Okay, so if I enter colon 6, let me print out. So it has printed out hello. Okay, so it means that start from 0, whatever it starts, like start from hello up to the sixth index. So 0 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, so it has completed 6 letters, so it has included space as well along with this hello in the terminal. Okay, so this is how you can take out the first 6 letters of that string. Okay, it's same as like 0 to 6. If I enter 0, I'm just trying it out. Yeah, it is like printing out the same variable. So let me copy this out, and let's try some other things. Let's say that I want to start off with 6 up to the end of this string. Okay, so I have entered 6 at start, but have not entered anything after that. So if I run it, you will see it has printed out word. So it is started off from word to the D, whatever ends. Okay, so this is how you can take this out. Now let's do something else. If I wanna start off with the 2 to the 6th index, it has print out double LO. So this is the second index, and this is the 6th index before 6th index. So double LO space, this is what it has printed, right? So uh, now there are multiple functions just like in Java, in JavaScript. If we want to find out the length of string or whatever, we have len. This is what we can use to print out the length of this string. So the length of this string is 6. I've entered 0 colon 6. Okay, I've not entered the whole s. Okay, so here I'm taking out the substring, and then I'm checking out the what is the length of that substring that I have taken that out. Okay, so there are a lot of function of string manipulation out there in the documentation. It gets updated day by day on each version of GoLang. Just check out the documentation of string manipulations in GoLang. You will check that out and you will learn a lot of things. Okay, so I'm gonna comment these lines now, and we're gonna learn arrays in the like just now. So how you can, what are arrays? Arrays means that a sequence of multiple values to be stored in one variable. Okay, so it means like how do we can define, like if I wanna define 1 2 3 4 5, so this is an array. Okay, it has multiple values separated by commas, and how we can store all these combination of values in one variable. Okay, so in GoLang we have a unique way of doing this. So var items, this is something straight, and I'm gonna define array, and I'm gonna define data type, and after that I'm gonna define empty array and the data type, and after that I'm gonna define square brackets, right? And now let's fmt dot print line, and I'm gonna define items, not semicolon. I'm used to the JavaScript actually. So you can see it has printed out all these values to be stored in the items. So this is the syntax of defining an array uh, in the GoLang. So if you want to define, just like if you want to declare an array before initializing its values, what you can do is like var list, and let's define the length of this like string. Okay, and now this contains nothing. I've not initialized this array yet. So if I just print this out, let's see what happens. So it has printed out empty array, uh, considering that there will be three values in it. So I have declared it. Now how can I initialize it? So each variable, each value of array belongs to indices. Okay, so one belongs to 0 index, two belongs to 1 index. So these are just values, it can be anything. So I'm going to declare these three values in it. So list, I'm going to define the 0 index because the length of this array is 3. I need to define three values in it. So what will 0 index contain? So hello, like ABC, DEF, and 2. So we have completed uh, GHI. Okay, so we have completed three indices and we have filled out all this array. So now if I run this file, you will see that each of the values have been stored in a particular index of this array, right? So next we're going to learn about if else loops, and we're going to use all these variables in the small programs that we're going to be building, and we're going to be using multiple a built-in function of this array and strings. So let's move forward and we're going to talk about if else and other conditional statements. So now we are going to talk about conditional statements, and in programming terminologies it is called if statements. So I've created a new file second.go, and I have added this package and I have added this function, and I have already installed few modules for Go, so I don't need to import FMT package in here. But if you are not using any VS Code modules, then you need to import FMT, right? So I'm gonna start off with creating a variable a colon equals to 12. Now what if I want to print two different messages based upon if my value, it can be a or any other variable name, is greater than 12 or less than 12 or equal to 12. So in other languages as well as in Go, we are given with if statements. So I'm gonna write if a is equals to 10, then I'm gonna add curly braces and I'm going to write print line a is equals to 10, right? And this statement is only gonna be printed if this a value is gonna be 10. Currently I've initialized it with 12, but usually almost every time we get these values dynamically from users. Let's say we are asking user to fill out the form, and from that form user is just entering his age, and we need to check out if age is greater than 12, greater than 20, whether he's a toddler or what. So I'm gonna run this file, and you see that it has not printed anything because this condition is false. So now let me change a equals to 10. Now this condition is gonna be equals to 10. Now if I run this file, you will see that this message has been printed, right? So let's say I want to add multiple statements. I can have if statement if a is equals to 12, and here I can add a message again over here that this statement is only gonna be true if a is equals to 12. So I can add any number of if statements as much as I want. So what compiler of Go is gonna do is it's gonna check all the statements. It's gonna check if this is true, if this is true. Let's say I want to add multiple conditional statements, and in those statements I want to stop execution of Go. If one condition is true, that means other conditionals cannot be true. So I don't want compiler to keep checking other conditions as well. So here comes, we can have else if statements, right? Else if statements means that if this is true, then don't execute this. Execute this only if this condition is false. So I can have as many else if statements as I want. Okay, so It means if this is true, then don't bother checking these conditions. Okay, if this is false, then check this. If this is true, then exempt the next one, and next one is only gonna be executed if the previous one is false. Okay, and yeah, and the last statements I can have is else statement. Else statement, I'm not gonna be adding any conditions. Else statement is gonna be executed if none of the above statements are true. Okay, without caring about any condition. So I can have any validation over here. So it is a is not equals to 10, 12 or 14. It means that this message is going to be printed if a has any value other than 10, 12 and 14. Okay, so let me change it to 9, and I'm going to run this file, and you will see that it has printed this line. Okay, so this is how we can add different conditions like if, else if and else. Now in Go language we are given with multiple options that we can add semicolon separated initialization of different variables, right? So let's say that I want to initialize a variable. Let's say in if statement I want to initialize b colon equals to 20, and I'm gonna add semicolon after that. Okay, and if I want to print this variable over here, let me change it to 10, and this is the condition. This statement is only going to be executed when this is true. Okay, but this is just the initialization of new variables. I'll let you know what does it mean, why do we need to initialize it over here, right? So you can see that it has printed this message. It is 20. I have initialized b, and this condition got true because a equals to 10. Now if I try to print out b, like let's say here, let me add b over here, let me print that out, it's gonna give me an error that b is undefined. That means that if any variable that we need within any if condition, we can set its scope within that if condition by initializing that variable directly before this conditional statement, right? If I tried copying and pasting over here, right, it will become available all over this function, but it will not only be available within this if condition. So if anywhere you need any variable to have scope of if condition, you can initialize it like that. Okay, how cool is that? Now I'm gonna just remove it from here. Now this is all about if, else if and else conditions. We can have other functions as well given by Go and also other languages. We have switch statements. Let me just copy all of this code, and I'm gonna let you know that how we can use switch statements, right? So in if conditions we can add ranges. Like one thing I needed to explain, let's say that if a is equals to 12, this is matching the equality, right? I can use other operators as well. Let's say less than 14. If any value is less than 14, this message is gonna be printed. Now what will be happen? Let me just run this file. Now you will see that this message is not being printed. The reason is it is else if. Else if means if any of the above two statements got true, you need to exempt rest of the conditional statements below that, right? So now let me just add 13 here. So I think this won't be true with 13, this won't be true with the 12. So it will be true because 13 is less than 14, right? So you can see it has printed this message that this condition got true. Okay, and we can have let me know, we can have less than, we can have greater than conditions, we can have greater than equals to, we can have less than equals to, we can have not equals to. Okay, so if I enter not equals over here, right? That means that a is not equals to 14. So that is the right statement. Okay. So 13 is not equals to 14. Let me run it and it should print the same message because 13 is not equal to 14. So these are the 4 or 5 operators that we can use. Now let's comment this out and I'm going to use switch statements. Here we can set the range. Okay. Range, I mean to say that we can have uh, uh, we can set it less than, greater than, whether the value is greater than 14. But what if I want to check the exact match of the whether this variable is matching with 13, 12 or 14? Okay, how we can do it? The best way to do it is to use the switch statements. So switch, and I'm gonna write a. Okay, now inside this switch I'm going to check whether a is equals to what value. So I am given with cases. So case, this is the keyword. If it is 12, then I'm gonna print out this message. Okay, a equals to 12, and I can have any number of cases. If k is 13, then print this message. If k is 14, then print this message. And just like the else statement in if, we can have a default keyword. Okay, so default a is equal to any integer because we are not sure what it is equals to. So that's why I have entered this message. Right now, if I run this file, you will see a equals to 13. So it means that I initialized a with 13 and now it is equals to 13, and this message has been printed. Now all these values are matching with whatever the variable we have written over here. Okay, so whenever we want to check exact values, whether the equality of those values belongs to that particular variable, best way is to use the switch statement rather than if else. If else is usually used for checking ranges, whether it's greater than, less than, not equals to. There are other operators as well, like and operator, or operator. I'll just let you know after I complete the switch statements, right? So this is the switch statement. There are different modification GoLang allow us to do. So just like I initialized a second variable after the if, I can initialize any other variable over here as well. Okay, and right after that I will add semicolon. So it is 13, a is 13, so I think this message is gonna be printed. So just to print out the value of b, I'm gonna enter the value of b over here. So I'm gonna use this thing over here, right? So I'm just run it. You can see it has printed 15. So that means we can add these initialize different variables over here. So if the purpose of initializing any variable after the switch statement is to set its scope directly within the switch statement. Any variable initialized over here cannot be accessible outside the switch statement within this function. Okay, so this is how we can use it. Another thing I want to explain is that if I want to print out the same message for multiple values in the switch statements, let's say if it's 13 or 15, I want to print out the same message, okay, or 15. So I can add different condition with comma separated values, 13 or 15. So let me enter a 15 over here, and now if I run this file, you will see that it has printed 15 or 13, this message, and it has matched any of these values from here. There is an or operator between these values. Okay. So another keyword I want to explain you is fall through. Okay. Fall through, what it will do is it's gonna force GoLang compiler to execute next case, even though this 14 is not equals to a value, then whatever the case coming next after this case is true, you need to execute next case as well. So in some cases it will be helpful. Maybe it might be helpful in some cases in real applications, but this is the keyword. This is the purpose of it, right? So now I'm done with the switch statement. Now let's go up to the if statements, and I want to talk about another operator. So let's say that if it is equals to 14 and I want to check multiple statements just like 13 and 15 I added in switch statements, I can also check it over here. So I'm going to use and operator, and I can check a equals to 15. Okay, so it cannot be and, it can be or. Okay, so a cannot be equals to 14 and 15 at the same time, so it can be either 14 or 15. So and didn't make sense, so I'm gonna run this file. So it has printed 14, okay, because this statement got true. This statement, sorry, got true, right? So now if I want to check the range, that whether this value of a is between 14 and 20, okay, and how can I check the range? I'm not going to check or operator and add a equals to 16, a equals to 17, a equals to 18. I don't want to write that much conditions. So in order to do that, I'm going to write if a is greater than 14 and a is less than 20. Okay, so it's gonna check that if a value is 15, 16, 17, 18 and 90, because I have not written greater than equals to. If I would have written greater than equals to, it means that it is equals to 14 as well, and it is equals to 20 as well if I would have written a less than equals to 20, right? So a is 15, then this condition should work again. Now let's move. You can see it has printed this. I can add any number of and operator and or operator in any if condition in order any kind of message to be executed, right? So this is very helpful. Almost in every little program you might need to use if statements, right? So this is the switch statement, this is the if statements, and yeah, next we're gonna talk about loops. So I have created a third file, third.go, and so first of all let's discuss what are loops. Let's say that you have a list of students, and each students have multiple data like the name, roll number, phone number, and other data, and there are 1,000 students. So are you gonna write 1,000 time fmt dot print line to print all the students, or if you have thousands of phone numbers, are you gonna write a print statement thousands of times? No, there should be some kind of rerunnable lines. There should be some kind of reiteratable functions given by a programming language that we can use to iterate through different languages, right? So for this we have a for loop, and I'm gonna first initialize 0, then I'm going to let it know that when it should stop executing a particular lines of code added within this for loop. Okay, so I want to tell it that you need to start off with 0 and you need to stop when I is equals to or greater than 10. So I is less than 10 means that only execute these lines of code within this for statement that we're just going to write until I is not less than 10. That means it's equal or greater than 10. And after that, when it should stop. So it will never stop by just initializing I with 0 and this condition. 0 will always be less than 10, so it will never stop. I need to increment this I after execution of lines. So I plus plus means that increment I after the body of this loop executes. So we can write anything within this body. We can write if statements, we can write other loops as well, and we can write switch statements as well. So let me just first print out these lines. So I'm gonna print out I within it. Okay, so let me first run this. I'm gonna change the name of file to third. So you can see that it has printed out values from 0 to 9. And let me just dry run this file quickly. So what it does is Go compiler read this line and this is equals to 0. Then it checked out that if I is less than 10, I is 0 and 0 is less than 10. So that's true. So it's going to come inside the body of the loop. So it's going to print out 0. Now it's going to check out and this statement after the third I plus plus, so it's going to increment the value of I, which become 1. Now it's going to again check this condition whether 1 is less than 10. Yeah, it's true. So it's going to print out this statement. And again, it's going to check out this. Then it's going to check out the condition whether it's true. It's going to print out 2. So when it's going to stop, when this will change I value to 10, and when this will check whether 10 is less than 10, it's become false. Then it's going to stop execution, right? So this initialization is only gonna happen once, because if it's gonna initialize multiple times, then this is gonna never be stopped. It's gonna be unlimited, and it's gonna be too not good for your RAM of your system, right? So now we can add if conditions as well. So let me add if conditions. So if I is equals to 4, and now I can add another statement like print line, and I can write I is equals to 4. Okay, this is just to check whether if statements work within loop. So this condition is only gonna work when I is becoming 4. Okay, so you can see when I was 4, it has printed out I equals to 4. This is the message over here. So that means this can execute. Okay, so let me just cut this line and print it after if statement, and let me just remove it. So what I want to do is there are two different keywords that are given by GoLang. If you have studied C++ or C, there were some keywords like continue or the break. Okay, and other languages have as well, like the C#, Java have these keywords. So when I is equals to 4, I don't want this to be printed. Okay, what can I do? If I is equals to 4, I want compiler to go to this condition to just increment and this check again. Okay, so I want to write like continue is the keyword, whatever the statements return after this continue statements within this for loop body, okay, will be exempted, and it will move compiler to this statement. Okay, and then it's gonna come down again to the lines within the body of the for loop. This is the body of for loop starting from curly braces and with the curly braces. And now we're gonna see that it's not going to print 4. Now you can see this is 3 and 5, so it exempted 4. So this moved GoLang to move to this statement. Now I want to stop execution of for loop whenever the condition becomes true. It is not necessary that we add a condition relevant to the variable used in the loop. We can add any condition that can use any variable outside this for loop, or even just true. Okay, so it's always gonna be true. Okay, and it's never going to print out this value. So let's try out. So you can see this is always true, and this is gonna happen, right? So condition can be anything. It can be using and operators, or operators, a long condition within this if condition. Now I want to check if I is equals to 7, then just break. Break means don't execute loop after that, just take the compiler out of the body of this loop. Okay, so you can see first it didn't print 4 because of this statement. It moved the compiler to this, and then if I is equals to 7, then it didn't print out this statement either. So from this statement, it just brought us to this line number 18, because it didn't let compiler to read or execute any lines after that. So that's why it only printed up to 6, exempting 4 because of this if condition, right? So this is how for loop works, and there are other loops as well, but in Golang all of those loops are used with the keyword for. Okay, even the while loop in other languages, even do while loop in other languages, for each loop in other languages, all are used with using the for loop. Okay, so how does it work? Let's move forward and let's try other loops as well. So let's say I have initialized in while loop. If you remember other languages, we used to initialize the variables outside the while loop, not within the while keyword. Okay, so now I'm going to use for keyword, and after that I'm going to write 10, and here I'm going to print out fmtp print print line, and it's going to print out I, and now I'm going to increment I. It's not I, it's A, sorry, right? So now if I run this file, it's going to print out values from 0 to 9. So I have initialized variable A, and it's going to be only going to be executed once, and it's going to check if A is less than 10. Yes, it's 0. 0 is less than 10. It's going to print out this. It's going to increment the value of A. A plus plus means it's going to increment A value by 1. Okay. So it's going to check the condition against 1 is less than 10. Yeah, it's true. So it's this process is going to go for a long time like this. Okay. And just like other if conditions, we can also add if conditions within this for loop, right? So there are there is other thing as well, do while loop. Okay, so how do while loop works, right? uh, we are not going to write anything after for keyword, and within the for keyword we're gonna print out the statement just like do while loop, and it's gonna so when it's gonna check the condition that it's need to stop. Okay, so within this for we're gonna check if A is uh, greater than 9, then just break. Okay, so it's going to start off with 0 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, and this gonna be condition is gonna be false. This condition is gonna be true when A becomes 10. Okay, when A becomes 10, then it's gonna break out the for loop. So let me just print this out, so you can see it has printed out all these values, right? So we can use loops to iterate through the values of array. We can use loops to iterate through the values of string. So I'm just going to let you know how you can iterate through the values of string. Okay, so let's just comment this thing, right? And now I'm going to initialize a string s, and I'm going to write hello world, right? And now I'm going to use a range keyword to iterate through each letter of this string. How we can do it, right? So now we're going to use for keyword again, and I'm going to initialize a variable index. Then I'm going to enter a variable name hex. These are not fixed keyword. I'm choosing these variable names myself, and hex is gonna be equals to range and s. Okay, so what it's doing over here, so for this is the string, and it is detecting that this is the string, and we need to iterate through all of the letters of the string using the keyword range. So when the compiler is going to iterate through this string, it's going to return us the index of each letter, like this belongs to 0 index, E belongs to 1 index, just like arrays I explained you at the start of like the first part of the video. So this is at the 3rd index and so on, right? And this is the hexa code of each letter. If you have studied binary numbers, you must have known that there are some hexa codes for each letters on your keyboard, as well as for special characters, for digits, for letters, and every character there is an hexa code, right? So we're gonna convert the hexa code into a string so that we get the exact letter of that hexa code which it's belong, right? So now we're gonna check that how does it work. Print line. Okay, and now I'm gonna first print out index just to know that whether the index is right or not, that belongs to the correct letter of this string. And then I'm gonna print out hex just to find out that what is the hexacode of this array. Now I need to print out the letter. So how can I print out the letter? I have got the hexacode, right? And if I convert this hexacode into a string, this is the type conversion, and it's gonna give me the letter, right? So now if I just print this out, you will see that it has printed out the index of first letter, which is 0, and then it has printed out this letter H. This is the first letter, and H has hexacode 104, okay, and E has hexacode 101, and each of these letters space even have hexacode of 32. Okay, so 0 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. So these are all the indices of this string. Hello world, how are you? Let me just write how are you. I have changed the string value. If I print this out, it's gonna print out all of the letters of this string. So this loop is called a range loop, right? So we can use these different loops. It's good that GoLang is only giving us for keyword, and it doesn't make us like confuse with other while loop or do while loop, right? So next we are going to talk about functions in GoLang. So what are functions? Functions are basically a part of code that you want to execute multiple times, right? It's just like an example that you have hired some person, and that person is responsible for printing out some document. Okay, sometimes you want to give that person some information so that he can get the printed document according to that instruction. Sometimes he want to keep that printed document with himself, or sometimes he want to bring back printed documents to you. So keep this example in your mind. So we're going to create different functions, and functions are responsible to be called multiple times and perform the same task that we have built that function for. It's not like you are going to hire again and again same person to do the same task. Okay, so this main is a one function that is by default given by GoLang. And if we want to create more functions, let's say that we want to create a function that whenever we call that function, it needs to print out some kind of message. Okay, so func message, and it's gonna be with the same syntax as it is for the main, and it needs to print out some kind of message. So print line, and hey, this is the message. And now I'm gonna run this file, and you see this has not printed anything. The reason is I have not called this person, this function actually, to do some task for me. So within the main, I'm gonna call this function. In order to call it, just write the name of that function, and after that just add parentheses. Okay, so now you see it's gonna print out this message, right? So consider it as a person you have hired to do some task again and again. Okay, we have hired this person. Now sometimes we need to give some information to this, that this is the message you need to print. It should not be hey fixed, right? So in order to receive the message, let's say that this is the message, and it is of type string. We can pass any message to this function, any variable that can be of any type. We can pass integers, floats, strings, arrays, and also another functions that we're going to talk about later on in this video, right? So this is what we're going to be printed, and here rather than writing hey, we are going to print out this message, because this variable is going to receive whatever the message we are going to send over here. Okay, so now we're going to pass hello, right? And let's say I want to call this person, this function again, to print out another message, right? So I'm gonna call this thing. Now you see, I have called this function 2 times and it has printed this message from here. Now you might be thinking that why can't we directly print out the same statements over here? So in this example, this is one line, but usually what happens is the functions contains dozens of lines, like the 20 lines, 50 lines one function can take. So if we want to use those lines 10 times in our program, we will need to rewrite those lines in the main function. Okay, so rather than rewriting those a lot of those lines within the main function, we will create one function and we're going to call that function so that can perform the same task that you have instructed to, right? So this is how we can pass some message to this function, right? Now just to reconsider an example of a person you have hired. You have instructed him and he's supposed to return you something, return the printed documents. So let's start off with an example. Let's create another function, add, consider it an add. We're gonna pass two variables of integer type to it. Okay, and we can pass two variables as well with the comma separated, and it's going to print out the addition of those two numbers. So add, and add is just a message just to let us know that what it's going to be printing. So a plus b, right? So I'm going to call this function now add 2 and 3, right? So now let's see what happens. If I just run this, you can see add 5. So I've called this add function. It is receiving two values. A is gonna receive 2 and B is gonna receive 3, right? It's gonna receive in the same sequence that I have passed, right? And here I'm printing out the message A plus B, which is 2 plus 3, right? This is how I can pass multiple values to this function or any other function. Now let's add another function. Let's say subtraction, and subtraction is going to be responsible of returning the addition of these two numbers. So how can you return the subtraction of these two numbers? There is a keyword called return, just like other languages, and it's going to return us the addition. So what should be the type of integer? It's not required that the returned value should be of the same type, so I need to define the type return value. So in this case, it's going to return me an integer value, okay, because a plus b is going to return me an integer. So now while it will return me some integer, I need to receive that thing. So subbed colon equals to, and then sub, I'm gonna call it and I'm gonna pass it 2 and 3. Let me just add the first number greater than this. Now I have called this function, and I have passed two values to this, and this function is returning me a minus b. It's actually a minus b, and it's a minus b is gonna be of type integer, and I'm just receiving the value in this variable, right? So if I just run this program, it's gonna throw an error because in GoLang, any variable that we're gonna declare or initialize, we need to use it somewhere. So let's use it. So I'm going to sub, and now I'm going to use this variable. So this is where I'm gonna use it, right? So this is the final result of 5 and 3. 5 minus 3 equals to 2, and I have printed out this variable, right? So this is how I can return different values. So I can pass any number of parameters to it and I can return some value. And just like Python languages, if you have used Python, we can return multiple values as well from any particular function. So let me create another function, and I'm going to give it a name, mul and div. So a of type integer and b of type integer as well, and the return type would be the two values. So that's why I have written two int within the parentheses. Okay, so what it's going to return, it's going to return me a multiplied by b comma separated a divided by b. Okay, because I have added two integers over here, it's gonna return me two integers from here as well, right? So now let's call this function, and I'm going to receive two values now. So mul and div, I need to receive it, and I'm going to use this function, and I'm going to pass 8 comma 2, right? And after that I'm gonna use it. Let's use this thing. So it is of type multiply, and then I'm going to use div and div. Right, if I run this program, you will see that it's going to print out mul 16 divided by div 4. So how is it working? It's going to call this function passing 8 and 2. It's going to find out 8 multiplied by 2 is equal to 16, and 8 divided by 2 equals to 4. And the first result is going to be stored in the first variable, whatever we have written. It's not fixed keyword, we can name variable anything we want, and second variable is going to be used over here. So now let's say that a function that you have already written is returning multiple values, and in some cases you don't want to use any particular variable. Let's say I only want to use multiplication, okay, and I don't want to make any change in this function. I just want to improve my logic that even though this function is going to return me multiple values, and I'm not going to receive all those values. So this way it's going to throw an error because this has been declared and I have not used it. It's going to throw me an error. Let's reconfirm it. So div is declared but not used. So any variable that you don't want to use but it's being returned from a function, you name that the variable name with this underscore. Now if you run this file, you will see that it's going to only give you this result and it's not going to throw an error, right? So this is how you can manipulate multiple things. Now let's say that in GoLang we can store a function reference in another variable. Okay, so let's comment these lines, and I have created these 2 3 4 functions above, and let's say that I have a function called sub. Okay, and let me just sub copy, this is a variable, and I'm going to store the reference of sub within this new variable. Okay, now let's copy it, and I'm going to pass some values to it, and let's copy it and name it over here, right? So let's see what happens. Now you'll see it has printed -1 -1. Now this is the name of function that I have created, and its reference, it has been stored within this variable. Okay, so now both the variables can be used to call this function because both variables is targeting the same RAM location where this function is stored. Okay, so I have passed this values using this variable, then this copy variable, the same thing is being returned, right? So now there is another thing we're gonna look, that if we want to create a function within another function, there is a possibility that we can do. So let's say that I want to create a function within the main function, my message func and message string, right? So this is the syntax of this function that we need to follow in order to create another function within another function. It can be within this function, so we can create nested functions as well. So we need to follow this thing. Now let's print this out. This is message, right? Now we need to use this variable. This is storing the reference of this function that we have just created, right? So now my message, and this is my custom nested function, right? So now you can see that it is calling this function, and we have passed this message. It has printed this message within this function, right? So this is how you can create nested function, and this is how you can store the reference of one function to another variable. Now uh, here we have been passing different values to particular functions. Just like it is receiving integer, it can also receive string, arrays, floats, decimals. Now there is a possibility in GoLang that we can pass another function reference as a parameter to another function. Okay, so let's say that I have created a function, and in that function it has some kind of param in it. Okay, and the param is the reference of another function. Let's say if it's add. Okay, so we can do that as well. So I'm gonna create a new function under add, and in that function I'm gonna pass the reference of this add function. Okay, so I'm gonna write func do add a int, b int, and f, which is of type func, and the function that I will be passing as a parameter to this function is going to have two internal parameters, right? Okay, so inside it, since I will be passing add function to it, and add will be expecting two parameters, and those parameters I'm passing from here. So f, a, and b, right? And let me just comment out these, and I'm going to write down do add 2 3 and add function. Okay, so let me run this file, and you can see add 5. So what it's done, it is passing 2 3 and the reference of this add function. So these are the params, and this is where the function reference is gonna be passed, and that's why rather than I'm using add, and I can use f. So the benefit of it, I can pass multiple references of function to this function that can expect uh, these much params. Okay, so let me convert this sub function into this. So if I just copy and paste it over here, and rather than add, I'm going to write sub and a minus b, right? And it's not returning anything now, but it's going to receive two parameters, and it's going to print like this, right? So both of these functions, add and sub, have different operators inside it for these two params. Okay, and rather than I will be calling sub and add function separately, I'm going to call this do add function and let it perform rest of two functions functionalities by itself. Okay, so do add, let me just do it, and this, and I'm using same function but passing the reference of sub, and I'm going to pass, so 5 minus 3 should be 2. You can see sub 2 and sub 3. So the same function I'm using to performing other functions, right? So this is how we can pass the function as a reference to another function. I want to talk about pointers next, but first let me talk about one thing. So let's say that I have this function message, and after actually printing out this message, I change this message. Okay, so A B C D, right? I have changed this string. Let me just comment this out, and this is where I am just calling that function, and after that uh, let me a colon equals to hello. Okay, and rather than calling the word, I'm passing a, and after that I'm going to print out a, right? So what I'm doing here is I am initializing a variable a and passing a over here. It's gonna call this function. It's gonna print out whatever I'm passing from here, which is hello. And from within that function, I am changing that variable to abcd. Okay, and then I'm printing out a again, right? So let me just run this file, and you see it has printed hello hello. That means that no matter if we pass any value to that function, and if we change the value of that variable, it's not going to reflect uh, outside of that function. So it has its own scope. Whatever we pass over here, whether it is message, whether it is a b, even if we change the values of these variable within that function, it will not be affecting outside that function or from where we are going to be calling. Right, so before starting off with the pointers, I just want to let you guys know that if you are liking my tutorial of GoLang, this is the crash course. Don't forget to subscribe my channel and hit the like button. I'm going to talk about pointers, but not the advanced level of pointers. So pointers are basically used to refer the memory location where the variable's value is stored. So let's say that we have created a variable equals to 2. So that means that this variable and the value of it have allocated a register in a RAM where this value is stored. So it has a particular address that we can use, right? So let's say that we have one variable and I want another variable to refer to same address of registers. So whatever is stored in that register will be the value for that variable. So if I have initialized variable b and I want to refer to the same memory location where the value of a variable is stored. So I can take the address of value 2 which is stored in a by just writing and a, right? So if I just write print ln and b, so let's run and let's see what happens. So it has printed out the address. So this address is basically the address of the memory location or the register where this value 2 is stored. So this value 2 we can refer it using the variable a, and the address of this memory location is being stored in b. Okay, so in order to take the value from the address, we can use the static. So now you can see it has printed 2. Now what will happen if we change the value of b? So let's say that I have entered this, let's say b equals to 10. We're gonna write static b, and now you can see it has printed 10. Along with printing 10, I'm going to print a as well. So now you can see the value of 10, a and b is 10 both. The reason is the b was referring to the same memory location, and when we change the value of b, it's going to change the value in that memory location which was being referred by the variable a as well. So no matter if we change the memory location value, it's going to affect every other variable that is referring to that location. Okay, so it's very beneficial if we want to store the references of different variables into another variables. Talking about the standard library provided by GoLang. So standard library provide us a lot of built-in functions that we don't need to rewrite by ourselves. Instead, use the built-in functions provided by these standard libraries. So we can see we have the CMD functions, compressions, crypto-related databases, debugging, embedded string manipulations, time manipulations, and a lot more things. So let's start off by creating a new file libs.go, and as we have done in the previous part that we need to create one package which is called main, and we have imported one package, built-in package fmt, which is used to take input from user, print out any output in the terminal, and this is the main function that we're going to use to start off writing our code in, right? So we have been using this package, and this package gives us a lot of things to print out something. But if we want to import further third standard library packages, we can use it by parentheses, and I'm gonna hit enter, enter, and hit enter, and on the next line I can write like another thing, strings. Okay, so strings is a standard library which gives us a lot of built-in functions to manipulate data, right? So in the main function, let's initialize a string, and now we're gonna manipulate this string. So let's say I want to check if this string contains a particular sequence of letters or not. Okay, so if we try to build our own logic, we're gonna take and write a lot of lines of code to actually check this out, but strings package gives us a lot of things to actually handle this. So j colon equals strings dot, and contains is a function which gives us flexibility. So let's say I want to figure out like a word, whether the word exists or not. So I'm going to print the j. So fmt dot print ln j. So in the terminal, I'm going to write go run libs.go. So it has printed false. The reason is the word is not existing in this string. So I'm going to change it to word, and let's see what happens. So it says true. So that means word exists over here. So let's try out few more things, and I'm going to copy and paste and change the variable names jkl, and I can replace a particular letters with something like I want to replace hello with hi. So I'm gonna replace ELLO with I, and in the last param we just need to pass 1 -1. Okay, and this third function that we can use is to lower. We can make all the letters to lowercase or uppercase, so we can we don't need to pass anything else except just a string. Okay, so I'm gonna print this out jkl. Right, now let's run this file, and you will see that it's true as we expected it, and hello world has been replaced with hi word, and all the letters have been converted to the lowercase. And there are a lot of string functions. If we just go to the standard library package for the string, you will see there are dozens of built-in functions provided by string that we can use. So let's check the time standard library. So the time library actually used to get the current time, get the current day, get the current month, year, and get the current conversion into milliseconds, into minutes, hours, days, and a lot of functions it gives us. So you can check all of these. I just want to print out the current time in my system. So now this is the current time in my system, which is the 11th of May 2021, and this is the time in my system, and this is just the location, right? So the time also gives us a lot of other functions as well, just like now, and you can use all these things. I'm not going to be talking about because it's complete library, and You need to figure out which one do you need. You don't need to learn all of the libraries. You just need to learn specific library that you need in your current project. You don't need to learn everything. Okay, so now that's it for the for using any standard library in your project. So now we are going to be talking about slices and maps in GoLang. So slices are just like, you can say, if you have worked on other languages, it's just like a linked list that you keep on adding more nodes as you require different values, and it will become a particular list, right? So starting off with FMT package that I've imported above, and I'm going to create a variable str, and I'm going to use a keyword make. Make is let us use to create slice, and after that I need to define it in this syntax, right? And first of all, before moving further, let me just print this variable and see what happens. So go run slices maps.go. So it has printed empty array. Okay, an empty array means that we have not stored any value to this list. So let's move forward and let's add something. So str equals to append, which is a built-in function, and str1. Let's say str equals to append str2. Okay, let's add equals here, and now let's try to print this out. Now you can see that it has added 1 and 2 in this slice, and we can add a lot more values. We don't need to define the length of this, and the benefit of it is, if we have defined an array for length 10, we will only be allowed to enter 10 values inside that array. But in this slice, using the make function, it's up to us, it's up to our requirement, that if we need 5 values, 10, 100,000 values, this slice, this variable will keep on increasing its length. Okay, and you can see it has keep on increasing its length, and we don't need to worry about how much memory it's gonna take in our RAM. Okay, so now if we have defined and initialize or append a value in a particular list, we can change its value. uh, like let's say this, we want to change the second value to 5. Okay, we can do it just like arrays. So string 1, because the second value is stored at the 1 index, the first value is stored in the 0th index. So I want to change the first value to 5, and let me just print this out again, and let's figure out the length of it as well. So len, which is gonna return me the length of it. So now you can see this has been printed and the second value got changed and its length is 3. So this is how we can like declare a slice using a make function, add the values, change the values, and find the length. And just like the length function, we have a lot more other functions that I explained in my previous video, right? So what if I want to define a particular length? Okay, so let me just copy above line and paste it. Okay, I'm gonna just comment above lines just so that when I print this out you don't get confused. So I'm gonna just change it to 2 here, right? And now I'm gonna print this out. So let's see what happens. So just like when we declare an integer variable that I explained in previous video, variable topic, the default value that it's stored to a variable is 0. So if I don't initialize a slice in GoLang, but if I add its length to 2, all of its values will be initialized with 0, just like a single variable. Okay, so now let's just copy above 2 lines, and now I have append 1 and 2 to it, right? So let's see what happens. Now you can see the zeros are existing over there, okay, because I have initialized the first two values with 0. The 1 and 2 has not replaced the first two zeros. If we want to change the value of first zeros, we could use it like this. So str0 equals to 5, str1 equals to 6, right? And fmt dot print line str. Now let's see what happens. Now I have changed the values of 5 and 6, okay. So even though we have initialized the first two values with 0, we can still add more values. It's not because it's just giving you the length of this slice that it's fixed. It's not fixed. We can still change it. Now, how can we initialize our slice at the time of initialization of its length? Okay, with not with zeros but with other values. So I'm gonna just comment above lines, and I'm going to change it str colon equals int, and with this curly braces I'm gonna write 1, 2 and 3. This is how I can initialize this slice, right? And let's copy above lines, and I have just done this. Let's change it to 4 and 5, and we're gonna print it. Now let's see what happens. Okay, now you can see that it has printed out 1, 2, 3 first from here, and we have appended 4, 5, and this is how it has printed. Now we have changed the first and second value. 1 and 2 will with this 5 and 6. Now it has printed this. This is how we can initialize a slice in GoLang, right? So just like arrays, we can also print out the range of values inside it. So if we have a string and we wanna only starting from 0 to the second index, we can use the colon after that, okay. So here you can see 5 and 6 has been printed because first two values are 5 and 6, right? So that was it for the slices. Now let's see what are maps. Maps are basically the key value pairs. If you have worked in the hash keys, JSON values, or the JavaScript objects, you must have known the keys, and against that key we have a value, right? So using the maps we can initialize any key value pair. So I'm gonna write wall, and I'm gonna use make, and within the make I'm gonna use a map function. Map array is gonna give me that key value pair thing. So this string means that the keys would be of type string, and the value against those keys will be of type integer, right? So wall and key1, which is the name of key, we can name it anything which is of type string, and the value is 1, right? So this is how we can add the key 2, which is 2. And now if I print this out, let's copy it from above and change it to VAL. Now let's run it, and now you can see that the map is being showing up with the key 1 having a value 1, key 2 having a value 2, right? If you want to print out any value, which we need to type the key name, irrespective of the sequence and the position of the key. We don't need to define a position. If key 2 was existing at the 100th position of this whole map, even though it could have fetched the value. Now you can see it has printed 1, because this is how we have added initialized the key 1 with, right? Now just like the slices, how we can initialize our key value pairs at the start of while creating the maps. Okay, so we can do it. Let's do it right below. So while to colon equals map, and while initializing we don't need to use the make function. So map string, which is of type keys, and then int And after that, within curly braces, we can write A colon 1, B colon 2, and C colon 3. Okay, so this is how we can initialize key value pairs. So while 2, so now you can see it has printed out the whole map that we just initialized. If you want to fetch out any value within key B, we can do it like this, right? So this is the value of it. So maps are really helpful when you want to define an object or a model, real life models, just like student name equals to this, roll number, address, phone numbers of a student. So you define key, and against that key you can define the values. So next we're going to talking about the structures in GoLang. Let me define you what are structures. Structures are basically the blueprint or templates, and just let me give you an example. Just like a company who make mobile phones does not recalculate all the width, height, color, functionality, features of a mobile phone again and again for every mobile set. They set the width, height, color, and every other property of the mobile phone or the individual part of the mobile, let's say screen, in the system. So system is responsible to take out all the input for those values and keep making the copies of it. Okay, so structure, we define the functions and the properties of a particular thing, particular model, particular object, and we ask is to create the copies of it again and again using those properties. So it's just the reusability. So let me define a structure. So outside the main function, we're going to use the type keyword, and within it we're going to type box struct, which is of type. Box is the name of that structure, and the struct is the keyword, the data type. And what should be the properties of box? We can add any property. So width, which is of type int, height, which is of type int. Okay, so we have added only two properties. So now we're gonna ask this structure to take the values from us, width and height, and give us the copies of it as much as we want. Okay, so in the main function, we're gonna write obj equals to box, right? And now if we just print this out, obj, let's see what happens. So it has created an object of type box, and by default it has added the 0 values as before. Now if I provide it a value, let's say obj2, let me copy the above two lines, and I'm gonna write 2 and 3, 2 and 2. Now let's see what happens. It's gonna create it's actually the data type. The box is data type, and box is only contains these much values of these types as we want. Okay, and we can also add a third property which is of type string, and we can add black to it. Okay, now you can see it has created an empty object first, and then it has created the object of the value types that we have provided it. Now the object 2, we can create copies of it with the same values. We can store all the copies within an array or within a map or slice or a list or any data structure we want. We can store the values of it or the copies of box using these properties. Okay, so now we need to pass the values in the same sequence that we have added it while creating the structure of this box. First value is of width, so 2 will be stored in the value width, and 3 will be stored in the height, and the third value will be stored in the third property. Let's say we don't want to follow the sequence of values. We only want to follow that we will let it know that this value is of type width. Let's say the 2 should be stored in height and 3 should be stored in width. How we can do that? We can do that just by adding height and adding a width and then color. Okay, let's comment above lines and let's print this out. And now you can see the 3 has been stored as a width, even though if we have added it as a second value, but before that we have added the name of that property that this 3 belongs to the width. Okay, even though it's the second value within this object, right? So this is how we can initialize it, right? So once we have added it, we can change its value. So obj2 dot width equals to 6. Now the width value should be changed to 6, just like the arrays or slices or maps that we have done before. Now you can see this width have been changed to 6. The same values has been changed, right? Now let's talk about the references of the objects. Okay, so if we store, let me first talk about, like, if we have added obj3 which is of type box, okay, and obj3 takes the value from obj2, right? And now we have to print out the value of obj3, and if we change the value of obj2 dot color equals to red. Okay, now if I print this out obj3 again, so now let's see what happens. Now you can see, let me comment above lines so you don't get confused. Okay, so 622 black. So this is how obj3 has been printed itself, because obj2, all of the properties of obj2 have been stored in obj3. Now obj2 color value has been changed to red. Okay, but we have printed the obj3 again. The red value have not been stored in obj3 because the previous value of obj2 was stored in obj3. The reason is, when we store the values like this, it creates a separate RAM location, separate registered in the memory of your system, and whenever we change the value of the any of these objects, the other objects memory locations will not be affected. Okay, now let's find out that how we can pass the reference of objects, so that when we try to copy object 2 into object 3, it copies the reference of object 2 RAM location into object 3. In order to do that, I'm gonna add a static before the data type of box, and while passing the obj2 into obj3, I'm gonna write this AND operator before obj2. Okay, now let's see what happens. So now you can see that first it printed out, this is just to refer that this is passed by reference but not the pass by value. So first it has printed the obj3, the default value of obj2. Now we have changed the value of obj2 to red, but we have printed the obj3. Now the red value have been reflected to obj3 as well over here. So this means that the both of these objects are referring to the same memory location and the same values are being used. So whenever if we change the value of obj3, it's gonna affect the value of obj2, and same for reverse, right? So this is how we can pass the objects and the struct values as a pass by reference in GoLang. So we have learned about structs. Now we have created a separate file called methods.go. Methods are similar to the functions. There are some differences, like we have defined a structs. Let's say that we have 3 props for this structure box, and we want to have some kind of methods in order to manipulate the data, the properties of this structure. So we need few functions that gets associated with this box structure, right? So now I'm gonna create few methods. So func, let me first write it down and I'll let you know how does it work. Right, so it looks similar to the functions, but there are some differences. So this part represents that this is associated with this box struct, and this is the name of method. When we need to use this method, we're going to call this, and this is the return type of this method, right? So when we're going to call this method, we're going to pass the object of this box structure, right? So inside it, I can do anything. Since I have added the return type, I can return things from here. So fmt and sprint. Fine. So I have written this line. So what is it doing? So %d are actually receiving the values from here. So the first %d will receive the value from the first value after the comma. The second d will receive the value. This is actually to structure and to lay out all the values along with the string value. So width will take from here, height from here, and the color. %s represents string and %d represents digit, right? So that's why I've added s over here. Now this function is associated, this method is associated with the box structure. Now how can I call this? So since I have already created this thing, now in order to use it, I can print this out. Simply print ln, and I have created obj, and if I write comma, I can access all these public variables like width, height, color, and also I can access this function because this function is associated with the each object of this structure. So obj dot p string, right? So let me just run this. Go run methods dot go. Now you can see it has printed out the same value from this to this, and the value we passed to it, we didn't pass any specific value to this function. It took the value from this object that we created for this structure. So this is the b, and we have passed this out, right? And just like the pass by reference I have explained before, we can also pass by reference the function names as well. So func b, and let's say we want to duplicate all the values like width and height of this object. Okay, so we have passed b dot width equals to b dot width multiplied by 2, and I'm gonna copy this. I'm gonna paste, copy the height, right? So I have created this method associated with this box. So now whatever object I'm gonna pass to this function, and it's gonna be duplicated for its reference as well. So I'm gonna call this function first. So box obj dot dope, right? And now I'm going to print this out. Now you can see the width and height are duplicated, but the black is remained same, right? So I have passed this object to this thing, and it has received the values of this box object and duplicated it, and I have not returned any value from here. It has automatically changing the value in the RAM location where the values of this object was stored. So that was the methods topic, that we can create any number of methods for a particular structure. So that's it for this video of GoLang Crash Course. Make sure you subscribe my channel. If you like my video, make sure to hit the like button and comment below if you have any question.